Did you know that some plants can switch the gender of their flowers between morning and evening like avocados? Or that some plants, like bananas, don't need pollination at all to produce fruit? And what about tomatoes? Which can fertilize themselves? In this video, we're diving into the incredible world of plant reproduction, from self-pollinating crops to those that depend on insects, wind, or even manual pollination. Let's explore the science behind the food we eat every day. To understand how plants reproduce, let's take a closer look at their flowers, where it all happens. Each flower has male and female parts that work together to make seeds. The male part, called the stamen, produces pollen in a structure known as the anther, which is held up by a thin stalk called the filament. On the other hand, the female part, called the carpel or pistil, has three main sections: the stigma, which catches the pollen; the style, a tube that connects the stigma to the ovary, where seeds begin to form after fertilization. And here's a fascinating detail. By simply looking at the flower, you can often tell if it's male or female. Male flowers have thin stems and visible anthers full of pollen, while female flowers have a slightly swollen base, the ovary that will eventually grow into a fruit. Now let's talk about plants that don't need much help from anyone. They handle pollination all by themselves. These are called self-pollinated plants, and they make up about 30% of the world's food crops. Examples include tomatoes, peas, soybeans, and rice. Here's how it works. Each flower has both male and female parts, so the pollen from the anther can easily reach the stigma within the same flower. This makes these plants incredibly reliable, as they don't depend on wind, insects, or manual intervention to produce food. That's why crops like tomatoes are a staple for home gardeners and large-scale farmers alike. No pollinators? No problem. Some plants prefer a little help from nature to get the job done. These are cross-pollinated plants, making up about 35% of the world's food crops. Examples include cucumbers, zucchini, and strawberries. Here's how it works. Instead of relying on themselves, these plants depend on insects to transfer pollen from one flower to another. The most important pollinators? Bees top the list, thanks to their fuzzy bodies that easily pick up and drop off pollen. Next are hoverflies, visiting over 70% of the world's crops. Then we have beetles, one of the oldest pollinators, and butterflies, which add a splash of color to the process. And when nature isn't cooperating, farmers step in with manual pollination. This can be as simple as gently shaking the plant or using a small brush to transfer pollen between flowers. It's quick, effective, and ensures a good harvest even without pollinators. Next, we have plants that rely on a completely different force: the wind. These wind-pollinated plants make up about 25% of the world's food crops, including staples like wheat, corn, and oats. Here's how it works. Instead of insects, these plants produce large amounts of lightweight pollen that the wind carries from flower to flower. While this method is effective for crops planted in dense fields, it can be a bit unpredictable since it depends on wind direction and speed. That's why wind-pollinated plants often grow in open spaces where their pollen can travel freely. Unlike insect-pollinated plants, these flowers are usually small and lack bright colors or scents because they don't need to attract pollinators. They let the wind do all the work. Now let's move on to dioecious plants, which make up about 5% of the world's food crops, like kiwi and date palms. Here's what makes them unique. Male and female flowers grow on separate plants. For the female plant to produce fruit, it needs pollen from a nearby male plant. This is why farmers often plant male and female trees close together to ensure successful pollination. It's a more complex system, but it's one of nature's brilliant ways of promoting genetic diversity. Finally, we have Parthenocarpic plants, which account for about 5% of the world's food crops. These are the overachievers of the plant world, producing fruit without any need for pollination. Examples include bananas, seedless watermelons, and seedless grapes. These crops are especially popular because their fruits are easier to eat, and their production doesn't depend on pollinators or environmental conditions. Farmers typically propagate them using cuttings or shoots, making them reliable for large-scale production. And that's the incredible world of plant reproduction, how our food depends on nature's unique systems, from self-pollinating crops to those that need wind, insects, or even a little help from us. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories about the science behind the food we eat. And if you're passionate about sustainable living, don't forget to check out our plant-based product store on Amazon. The link is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.